Welcome to another weekend here on the platform. My name is Sam Omatseye. My special guest today is none other than Anietie Usen, a writer, journalist, award winner, who has drawn attention to himself with his new book, The Village Boy, a book of arresting prose and rustic details that you compare to quite a few books ever written. I welcome you, Anietie Usen, to my show.
Thank you so very much, Sam. Good to see you again.
So what is it that brought you into the whole idea of writing Village Boy? Village Boy has now been translated, or it's been translated to a number of languages. They just completed the Japanese version.
Yeah, sure. Well, I have always been incubating the idea of writing the story of village life in Akwa Cross. That's Akwa Ibom and Cross River State. It's a very unique story about how we live in this part of Nigeria. It has never been written. How we grew up in the 60s, 70s, and probably how we still grow up now, under very, tough circumstances, poverty-stricken environment, hard work. And the COVID lockdown provided me the opportunity to take a look at the story, and thank God I was able to, do it during the COVID lockdown. And then luckily, I would say it has arrested the attention of the better part of the world, and it is still doing so. And I believe this is so because the book is really resonating with a lot of people and with a lot of lives. A lot of people see themselves in the book, not just about Akwa Cross or Niger Delta, but across the African continent. The issues of poverty, hunger, and hardship in the African continent is actually brought to fore, and how people are brought out from that kind of hardship into a life that is a little bit more reasonable and sustainable.
The interesting part of the book will be, to so many people, different things. Is it your grandmother? Is it your escapades with the rats in the room were going up? Was it the uncles? Is it the story of getting admission into high school? There are quite a number of stories. There's a sense that the story itself happened to you as though you have been waiting to write it for a long time.
Well, that is partially the truth. That's just the half truth. The whole truth is that this is the story of not just Akan, the main character in the book. This is a story of so many village boys of my generation. And so it is not just a matter of Akan. There are so many other, in fact, the book resonates a lot because thousands of people see themselves in the book, see their lives in the book, see their villages in the book, see their growing up years. That's why I'm virtually besieged. The publishers are doing overtime to bring more copies, and wherever you go, Village Boy is the talk of the time. Even in the church, the other day I was invited to say something in the church, and the whole place just called us Village Boy, Village Boy, Village Boy. This because this is a story that so many people can identify with, which has never been told. And like I said in parts of the book, that this is a very breezy window to the past for young people who don't know how we lived in the 60s and 70s, what we ate, the kind of vehicles we rode, the kind of schools we went to. So this is like a very breezy window for them to pick and see the footsteps of their fathers and grandfathers. And for people of our generation, my generation, is a nostalgia to really relish because some of us, because of some sense of modernity, we've forgotten what it was like in the past. And for teachers, like you rightly said, is a study in creative writing. And so this is a book for all. Unlike my previous book, Audacious Journalism, which was a book for journalists, teachers, and teachers of journalism, Village Boy is a book for all. There are too many people from the villages who are pretending not to be from the village.
Now, there's a background to this story. The background to the story is that Akan, which is you, was actually a Lagos boy before he became a village boy. But the thing is that he's not even aware that he was once a Lagos boy because he grew up a village boy.
Yeah, sure.
Now, he lost his father on Marina while he was still a little boy. And that was when poverty struck him. It shows that the life began with a visitor. You were supposed to be a Lagos boy, and then you became a village boy just because of one accident. And that changed your life completely. And then you started living in There's no recall in the book about your village life, about your Lagos life. Do you have any memories of Lagos?
No. Well, as you know, Sam, I returned to Lagos much later in my life, and we worked together at Newswatch and various other newspaper organizations. I think actually that I cherish my village life than probably more than if I had grown up in Lagos. I really cherish, there's nothing I can exchange for the way I grew up under hardship, hawking, fruits, oranges and things on the street, going to village schools. I think that really helped to toughen me up. And so when I returned back to Lagos, I was on what you call Jebota. As you know, I was in every forest, swamp and swatches, and wherever it was tough, civil wars around the world, I was there. I think that village life is actually what prepared me for the tough journalism life that I encountered later in my life. And I think a lot of us need to go back to the village to learn how to be tough.
Now, there's always a feeling that people who live in the village, they are poor because of the way they live and so on. Did you ever feel poor, or you were made to feel poor?
It didn't quite occur to me, and I believe it doesn't even occur to most village boys that they are poor, because everybody is the same, And
exactly.
Hard work. Yes. Now, you modern people, you call it child abuse, isn't it? We could trek for miles to carry cassava on our heads, baskets of cassava for our grandmothers. We could trek for miles to go to streams and fetch water. Then we trek for miles to go to school. We come back from school, we return to the farm, or we go and hawk on the streets to sell things for our grandparents. We never saw it as a hard life or anything extraordinary. We thought that was very normal. And we grew up appreciating that. And our grandparents and our parents that brought us up under these tough conditions that are called child abuse now, they did it with love. They love us so much. They make sure that they keep telling you that, look, these things you are doing is for your good. You need to work hard. You need to. And so it wasn't like a child abuse for us in those days.
Now, tell me about your grandmother. Your grandmother was an extraordinary woman.
Very heroic woman.
With both of you moving into the bush. She probably lost her sense of time. There was no watch. There was no wristwatch. She didn't know whether it was done. I think when she woke up, she decided that it was time to go to the bush. And then there was this encounter with a snake. You didn't say, you wrote it with the naivety of the child. As a grown-up, what is your reflection about what was going on in your mind when that snake bit your grandmother?
Well, honestly, I thought that was the end, because my grandmother was my everything, and I screamed a lot. She was actually the one who turned up to pacify me and, look for some herbs to help herself. And but looking back at it now, I think snake bites are still very dangerous in the villages. And there are villages that are living under perpetual threats of, I know some NGOs are working on things like that. And so many lives used to be lost, except for the fact that she was a herbalist, not in the mystical terms now. She was someone who knew a lot about leaves that, cure nearly everything. It would have been dangerous. It would have, it would have been the end. But she was able to provide solution for herself, and then we recovered. But for me at that time, it was a very dangerous encounter with snakes, and especially in the thick of the night.
There was also evidence that although she knew a lot of herbs, she did not want people to know what the herbs were. She was keeping them like trade secrets. How did that go? I mean, you gave us a hint of that when she told them to go and bring leaves to cure herself.
Yes, because she was in a very dangerous...
some of those things from her. Did she let you into the secrets?
Yeah, sure. I got to know a bit of one or two things. There was virtually a herb for every illness, whether it was headache, whether it was stomachache, whether it was deworming, or whether it was even a dog bite or snake bite, something as serious as that. But they keep it, top secret for themselves. My grandmother would never allow any other person. It was something that was handed over to her by her father, according to her. And she only gave it to her favorite daughter by the time she was about to die, so that the thing can continue. But it is rare, very rare,
really,
for you to
link your mother.
No. This was my paternal grandmother.
Okay.
Yeah, this was my paternal grandmother.
She was okay.
Yeah, sure. So she gave a bit of the secret to one of our daughters. That one is still alive and is still putting it to practice.
Okay.
We villagers have a herb for every illness. Till now, most people in my village don't pay attention to the so-called orthodox medicine whenever they are ill.
Now, tell me about your two uncles. I know you are kind of touchy about it. There was one who was very benevolent and the other one who was ruthless. You were navigating them. When you grew up, did you come to see them differently?
Well, the first point to note is that village boy is a faction. It's more a fiction than a fact. And there are scenarios that are created to heighten the suspense and create tension.
It's part true, part imaginary.
Fiction. Yeah, sure. And so that must be understood along those lines. But that's not to say that I didn't have two different uncles that had different ways of dealing with me. But like a child, you normally prefer the one that tell you stories, pamper you a little bit, flog you less. Then you weigh that against the one that was very rough, temperamental, erupting like a volcano in anger, and everybody will be looking for a way to hide themselves. So there's a whole lot of fiction that come into playing up those characters. There were some of my other friends had uncles that resembled exactly those. So I will borrow from the experiences of other friends who had, very hot-tempered uncles who flogged them 24/7, and then add to this kind of experience in order to produce the kind of story that we enjoy today.
There was this thing there about your grandmother rewarding you with a plate of fufu, but the fufu, there was no soup.
It was normal in the village. You don't ask for soup in the village. In the village, sometimes we go to school without food. But your grandmother will tell you, when you're back from the school, there's food over the fireplace. Of course, what you will see is just hard dough of fufu, no soup. But as a village boy, you know what to do. You just go to the farm there and pluck pepper and pound it a little bit, put salt and turn it. That's soup. But like I said in the story, that used to be a very wild soup, very hot-tempered soup.
Yes, yes, very, very hot-tempered soup. I like that. Yes, lot of pepper.
But of course, we knew how to tame the shrew. We know what to do. Village boys know how to handle all those tough things. Before you even go for that pepper soup, as it were, you need, you know that it'll be very hot. So you have to crack some kernels and keep them, immediately you finish eating, you throw palm kernels into your mouth, and that's the solution for the hot pepper.
Going to school was sometimes a challenge.
Sam, you were not a village boy. You are too curious about village life.
It's about work, and it's about study, and it's about teachers. But the thing that really caught my attention about your education was one when somebody was beaten sore, and the father came in with a gun, and everybody scattered. Everybody went into the bush, and so on, and so on and so forth. What happened after that? How did they regroup in school the next day?
Corporal punishment is routine in village schools in those days. And that's what panel beaten all of us into shape to become disciplined later in life. But sometimes some teachers just, went off the line and do the wrong things. And in this case, one of my friends arrived in school, had a boil, and the compound master, and gave excuse why he was late for school. The compound master thought it was a joke and went about to flog the guy very badly. And the guy was bleeding, and he cried back home. And his father was a hunter, and trouble sparked. The man arrived in the school and released his gun, bam, 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 in the air. And everybody, teacher applause. We escaped into the bush. And that was the end of school for that day. But for us, village boys, we stayed there in the bush and enjoyed ourselves eating raw cassava. Teachers found their way home. Eventually, I think the thing was sorted out maybe with the village head in the council hall. And we children never bothered to know how it was sorted out. But from that time, some of the teachers began to be careful about extreme, corporal punishment.
The other incident that really interested me was when you wanted to get into high school and your parents, let me say your mother, had to write a letter to all your father's friends to get the money together. And then they put you in school. And the condition was that you had to be of exemplary conduct and performance, academic performance, to go about. What insight at that time did you get of who your mother was? Because your mother was a sort of missionary at that time during the Civil War, I presumed.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I was separated from my mother during the Civil War, and that's how my grandmother now championed the better part of my life, almost through my primary education. When the war ended, my mother was lucky to be among those who survived. Luckily for her, she was working with one of the charity organizations, and then she took over. So there was a power changeover, so to speak. And my mother now wrote a letter, as you said, to some guys, young people who were friends of my father in Lagos, and said, remember your friend, remember the son, ready to go to secondary school, no money. I'm just back from the Civil War. And so 5 of them championed by a man called Onofiok Andrew Ufot. That's the father of Udemofort. I'm sure you know Udemofort. You know Udemofort?
Yes, yes.
Udemofort, MFR, yes. Of ESO and U,
yes.
Sachi and Sachi. Yeah, it was his father. His father was one of them. It's his father that championed that scholarship. And now sending a letter to my mother. I still have the letter. I wish I knew. I wish I knew you would ask me about this letter. I would have shown you the letter because my mother had it about the letter.
To you. Okay.
So I have it in one of my iPads here. And so and they said in the letter, look, we are struggling people too, but we can't forget our late friend. We are going to pay the school fees, but if he fails, we would not be able to do it again. I'm sure they just said that so that I'll be challenged to sit up and I didn't disappoint them. I didn't disappoint them. Yeah.
As we wrap up this interview, you're not just about Village Boy. You wrote another book on journalism, which also reflected your time as an award-winning writer. I remember in those days in Newswatch, you and a few others were the go-to people for important stories. You also traveled, did some.
But Sam, you also did very well,
and all of that. How has the writing life been for you?
Well, I do little or no writing journalism-wise anymore, but I hope to do so. The flair is still there. The passion to write is still very much there. But I'm looking for the avenue to express what I think. Recently, I wrote something about true federation, which is the problem with our country today. This is a contraption of a federation, and a contraption cannot work like the genuine ones. And until most people are busy complaining about Buhari, I don't think Buhari is the problem. The problem is actually the structure of government that facilitate good governance. It's not there in the country. And until we get back to the foundation of our country and reorder our steps and our structures, it won't work. It's not a matter of whether it's a Fulani man or Calabar man or a John man that is the president. The problem with Nigeria is a structure, the foundation that carried the country.
Yeah. On that note, I thank you, Anietie Usen, for being a guest and for this gift of a book, The Village Boy, that you have written. And I wish you more success on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam. You're a great guy. God bless you.
My poem on Leah Sharibu will be read to you now.
What would you, Leah, do if asked to protest on the streets in a big city? Sweat among rabbit chants? Air crisp with cans? Will you protest your children or with them? Will you name your oppressor, and who will he be? The man who made you a woman, or those who manned him?
Thank you for being on this show. You can join me on my column at www.samomatseye.com. And until next time, be good.